Thanks very much. I'm Ed, and I've been around the district for a while, so we'll just get right to it. There is a peculiar kind of darkness that lies on the land that only January can produce, and snow is piled thick against the trees until the entire world is continuous and softly rounded. The rising moon paints a silver outline on every object. The hum of other machines fades in the distance as you stop and you switch off the snowmobile engine, sliding the helmet from your head. Inside homes, the heat is turned up and the blankets are piled high. January does not belong to the timid. But to those willing to befriend winter comes the companionship of the ride, the exhilaration of frigid air, and every once in a while, in moments like this, a gift from the solitary world of deep winter to those courageous enough to embrace it. There is a crispness in the air that no longer allows summer to lie about its age. The marsh's song has changed from the anticipation of spring to the imminency of autumn, and sedge wrens have fled southwards, and at dusk the blackbirds dance across the sky in an immense murmuration, the flock shifting and rolling as though it was possessed by a single avian mind. But not all things are time-worn among the cattails. I don't know why it did that. But not all things are time-worn among the cattails. For today, a son hunts with his father for the very first time. And in the pre-dawn setting of decoys and the long wait in the blind, he is learning that important things in life demand patience. And observing the slow awakening of the wetlands, he is learning an even more important lesson, that hunting is about the journey and not the result. To the mind of the 10-year-old, it has been a day of unpleasantness, a day of mosquitoes and tick checks and humidity and brambles. It would have been so much better to have spent the day rising to new levels in video games or swimming in the pool instead of looking for birds. But the woman running the program insists that they keep going, that something cool is bound to be right down the trail. And so once again, the 10-year-old focuses binoculars on a group of sparrows clustered around a puddle. And then it happens. Without warning, a small hawk swoops from a hidden outlook among the oaks and slams into the birds. A struggle ensues, and minutes later, the hawk is perched above them, plucking the feathers from its prize and feeding two loud, fuzzy chicks. In that moment, something has shifted in the 10-year-old that will remain with him for the rest of his life. The outdoors has become the cool place to be. It is high summer, and it has arrived with big blue stem and compass plants stretching upwards to the sun. Now, the old diaries tell of grasses so high that they reach the saddle horn of a man on horseback. And riding the trail through the restored prairie on a sun-dappled day, it is only the horseman that can test the truth of those old tales. To the walkers who share the pathway, it would seem as if two separate animals, one human and one horse, pass by. But the horse and rider know differently. They share a connection that stretches backwards in time to the cave walls of Lascaux and to the plains of Kakistan 5,000 years ago, when a person slid onto the back of a horse, a step pony, for the very first time. They know that on that day, two minds merged, and they have been inseparable ever since. Now, on the surface, each of these activities, and indeed all of the outdoor uses that our delegates today represent, may seem to be very different from one another, but they are not. Every outdoor interest here today is bound together in three very important ways. Each is joined by the common thread of an American conservation legacy stretching back in time for a century and a half and forming a shared foundation of outdoor values. And each is critically dependent on accessible, safe, and ecologically healthy public lands that exist under ironclad protections that are designed to stretch across the generations. And finally, the legacy of public lands that provide the wide open spaces on which to enjoy these activities is under a growing threat from political and special interests that would tear apart what has taken decades to bring together. To know where you are going, it is important to know where you have been, and the shared history that binds the hunter to the birder and the bicyclist to the picnicking family has come in distinct conservation waves over the years, each new set of insights and ideas building on the ones that have come before it. As the western line of settlement started to contract in the mid-19th century, the nation's view of wilderness and nature began to change. The first wave of modern conservation, the Transcendentalist movement, appeared just as the last great push westward began. Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, John Muir, and Emily Dickinson were the vanguard of a movement that believed that divinity could be found in all things, but especially in nature. For them, the natural world was the greatest cathedral in which to find one's connection to the higher power, and nature deserved protection because it was the handiwork of that creator. They are the great-great-great-grandparents of modern conservation. In the 1890 census, it was the first time in the nation's history that the word frontier was no longer used as an identifier for a place of residence. Americans came to the grim realization that moving west over the next hill when land had been worn out was no longer an option, for over the next hill lay the Pacific Ocean. The extinction of the passenger pigeon and the near extinction of the bison transformed the Transcendentalist thought of the time with new ideas that defined the word conservation for the first time as the foresighted utilization, preservation, and renewal of forest and water, lands, and minerals for the greatest good of the greatest number for the longest time. Gifford Pinchot established modern forestry, and Theodore Roosevelt, president, Rough Rider, and big game hunter, became the first modern politician to recognize the need for regulation and protection of natural resources. Roosevelt made conservation a priority, and he created 5 national parks, 18 national monuments, 150 national forests, and he established the National Wildlife Refuge System, and he never once apologized for doing any one of those things. The Great Depression and the devastation of the Dust Bowl forced the country to confront the misuse of land head-on and address the social problems that came in its wake. From the formation of the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 30s, to the birth of the Duck Stamp, to the Wilderness Act, to the first Earth Day, and the signing of the Endangered Species Act, environmentalism was built on the foundation that was laid down by earlier forms of conservation. Leaders like Aldo Leopold and Rachel Carson and Jacques Cousteau and Jane Goodall ushered in the science of ecology. And the first glimpse of a small blue planet from the surface of the moon transformed our view of Earth forever. Out of this iteration of conservation comes the fundamental truth that all of humanity shares one planet, and the world's oceans and atmosphere, weather, and human culture are ecologically intertwined. And it is from this movement that the McHenry County Conservation District was born. We've come now to a rare and defining moment in the first decades of the 21st century, and we stand poised on a third wave of conservation. It is yet unnamed, but perhaps one day it might be known as the Great Remembering. For it is a time when our culture is awakening from the long forgetting, and we are remembering that we are part and not apart from the natural world. The fourth wave welds together what a century and a half of conservationists has taught us with a new and a very powerful message, that all decisions regarding technology, energy, economics, and politics can no longer be determined apart and separate from the natural world, that we must, as the Iroquois proverb asks us to remember, consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. Healthy land produces a vibrant and healthy society, and ruined land produces only a ruined society. It is as simple and as straightforward as that. It's the currents of the fourth wave that have brought us to the McHenry County Conservation District's first Congress. Ralph Waldo Emerson once noted that what lies behind us and what lies before us are small matters compared to what lies within us. He could have very easily been thinking of our delegates who are assembled here today. Your selection is neither random nor accidental. You have been asked to be part of this Congress to share your expertise and to represent your area of outdoor interest. And each of you will represent those interests with enthusiasm and thoroughness. The Congress is different than others you may have attended, for it is the opening of an ongoing dialogue, and the new connections we hope you make today and the old ones we hope are strengthened will be supported and built on through future congressional gatherings every other year. Today, however, we face head-on some of the most pressing questions related to conservation and public lands. And they are questions that need to be answered, and they are solutions that need to be developed from the grassroots up. And how we solve them will decide the future of public lands in the county. The questions are many, but they include: how do we involve a new generation in traditional outdoor pursuits and develop new ones that bring that generation out of the house and into the prairie? If you downloaded the app, or in my case, if you tried to download the app for the Congress, you know it is a brave new world out there, and we must solve how do we excite a generation that spends more time with their fingers on the keypad than they do on the fishing reel, and more time with their eyes affixed to the screen than to the splendor of the night sky. How do we engage new ethnicities and changing demographics in McHenry County with the wealth of public open space that is at their doorstep near every town and village, and in the process create new conservation champions for the next generation? And most importantly, how do we unite different user groups who have a shared common interest in the outdoors to ensure that bad political ideas and lack of funding do not cripple or destroy the heritage of the public lands that it has taken 5 decades to develop? At the root of all of these questions, how do we ensure that the beauty and the diversity of the lands that we enjoy today are passed on in even better condition to the citizens of the county who have yet to be born? In every generation of conservationists, there comes a defining moment, a place of decision. As Robert Frost said, a place in the woods where 2 roads diverged, and we are asked if we have the courage to choose the one less traveled. For make no mistake about it, nothing less than the future of the outdoors we all hold so dear is at stake. Thus, as delegates, as the best outdoor minds of our region, you are asked to embrace the role today as an architect for the bricks and the mortar of conservation in our county for the next half century. You're asked to integrate the passion that you feel for your own area of expertise into a passion for the public lands that support those endeavors. And you're asked to think beyond your particular interest and to think today broadly and to think today boldly. Much is being asked of you and much is expected. For today we expect each man to be a Roosevelt and each woman a Rachel Carson. Now, we have spoken of dark nights amid falling snow and the bond between father and son born of the first hunt, of the field being one with another animal astride its back. We shared in the excitement of that first moment in childhood when nature enters our life. And we've talked about our shared history as conservationists, but we have yet to speak in depth of one thing, and perhaps it is most fitting to close the circle by remembering it. We have not yet spoken of the ultimate user group, the quintessence of what the word outdoors means. Delegates, your most sacred responsibility in the hours to come is to also speak for the largest constituency the district has, and the one that has no delegates or alternates here today, or even a single observer. That constituency is the land itself, and everything that depends upon it, not for outdoor recreation or education or any of the other values we all hold so dear in public lands, but for its very survival. Today, you must be the voice for every form of life that shares those public lands, from the champion buck to the humblest monarch caterpillar. And I lay that charge upon you to remember in all of your deliberations. I would like to leave you with a story, one that is so old that few people remember its beginning. In the summer of 1870, a party of miners entered a mysterious landscape of boiling mud pots and waterfalls and beautiful rock formations. Failing to find the gold that they sought, several of the men were nonetheless unable to forget the beauty of this magnificent area. Returning east, they suggested that the region be set aside as a park so that future generations of Americans might enjoy the same wonders. And few paid attention to their ideas. Most thought that the whole tale had been contrived as an elaborate hoax. And it wasn't until an exploration party sent out by the government returned the next year that the veracity of the claims were verified. And that party approached President Ulysses Grant and asked him to consider setting aside the first ever People's Park. And on March 1st, 1872, Grant signed the historic bill that created Yellowstone, the world's first national park. On that day, an idea was born that has become enshrined across the globe in hundreds of countries. But supporting the act took foresight and it took courage. An editorial published just prior to the act's passage reflected the perspective of many people at the time. The preposterous idea of a people's park has been promulgated by short-sighted men who refuse to acknowledge that the strength of the nation is in the use of the natural riches bestowed upon it by a gentle and caring providence. Better to open the region of the Yellowstone River to settlement by those industrious individuals who shall convert its timber, soil, and mineral wealth to a prosperous and settled portion of the country, rather than preserve it simply as a wilderness of Canaan suited only for wild men and wild beasts. Consider for a moment what would have happened if a few committed individuals hadn't the courage to see the People's Park through to completion. Today, conservation is under attack as never before, assailed at both the state and the federal level as a luxury that we can no longer afford. Some states have auctioned off public lands purchased with tax dollars and promises that they would be open space forever. And in more than one place, scientists have been forbidden to speak about their findings because they do not support expedient political perspectives. And everywhere is the call for less government, more consolidation, less regulation, and more ability for individuals and corporations to do as they please with the land, regardless of the impacts. The question is not whether there will always be interest that see land as something to be exploited and public lands as a barrier to that exploitation. They will always be there. The question is, do we rise to the challenge as generations of conservationists have before us? It is said that a dwarf on the shoulders of a giant sees the further of the two. And our generation of outdoor enthusiasts stands on the shoulder of many such giants. The Muirs, the Roosevelts, the Rachel Carsons, the Jane Goodalls. If the task of building united conservation partnerships and bringing a new generation into the outdoors seems daunting, I would leave you with this thought. All things that have ever been accomplished in conservation have passed through the same three stages. First, they are impossible. Then they are difficult. And then they are done. Or as Teddy Roosevelt liked to say, do what you can with what you have, where you're at, and the rest will just happen. So good luck on today's Congress, and on behalf of the district, thank you. I think you want to bring up this one, SSM.
Thank you, Ed. I can so appreciate this technology challenge. It's not my greatest strength. Mr. Ed Collins has invited all you delegates to a charge, and that is really what we're all about today, unifying our voices. Introducing this conversation and congressional session number 1 will be a woman who is highly accomplished, and I've recently just met her this morning, and I will tell you that I suspect she is also crackerjack smart. You're going to enjoy listening to her. Her background is an executive director of Chicago Wilderness, and that is a regional conservation collaborative of over 300 conservation organizations, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan. This woman is also very familiar with both conservation challenges and opportunities. I believe she is the appropriate person to begin to unify our voices. Please join me in welcoming a McHenry County thunderous applause for Dr. Suzanne Malec McKenna.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure. But we should all go woo, 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 something like that. Come on, something. Oh my goodness. Good morning, everybody. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Woo! We're ready. Okay, now I know we're ready. But Paul, hang in there because I may need you in just a moment. Slideshow. It's up? Don't lie to me, Ed. Yeah, I know it's on the screen. That doesn't help me. Hold on. Oh, here he comes. See if I can do it before he gets here. Oh, ha ha. Thank you, Paul. I'm quite proud because I'm not a techie. I'm a naturey and a politician and a reverend and child. I'm a farmer and a hunter and a fisherman. I'm an industrialist, but not a techie. Let's just be clear. I'm also completely honored to be here amongst the ultimate conservation glitterati, which is McHenry County, and all the players here. I look out across and I think, oh my God, what would have been if XYZ person wasn't here? And it's kind of daunting to think about it. And not only have you been leading all that has happened in your community, but you've been leading across the entire region. Very briefly, this thing called Chicago Wilderness came about with some leadership straight here in McHenry County. Over the past 20 years, we'll see 20 years this year, we figured out the most important thing, which is that nature and people are together, not separate, but together. And we've had both negative and positive impacts on that over the many years. Ed was so poetic. I didn't know you were a poet. Pretty darn impressed. Ed was so poetic. I'm putting on my timer. With how he presented it all. And, you know, I know he's cool and is really great with the land, but I didn't know he was a poet, so thank you, Ed. We are a regional alliance that's focusing on strategy to preserve, improve, and expand nature and quality of life in this region. When I say expand, it's not only land conservation. McHenry County Conservation District has preserved 25,000 acres and going, and the Land Conservancy and so many other partners, private property owners, et cetera, have had such an incredible part to play in this. But expanding also means acknowledging the opportunity on lands that we may not think of as nature, because indeed they have a great potential. They have that part in the soil. They have plants, or they have animals that use it, or they have us on it. And that's always a connection in some way, shape, or form in nature. Okay, it doesn't show here, but I'm gonna just look up that way. This is the Chicago Wilderness region, as was just mentioned. We touch 4 states, 38 counties, 10 plus million people, 200 plus miles of Lake Michigan shoreline, and a lot of other things. The number I like to show on the bottom is gross regional product, which don't ask me to define, but I know it's important, and it's from the U.S. Department of Commerce. This particular region is responsible for $575 billion plus dollars. That is important for us to remember as well, because indeed a healthy region is one that is also prosperous, not only in nature, but in economy, in public health, etc. So building on this 20-year collaboration, and McHenry County, you know, the district's got, almost 50 years, so you've got double the experience and so much to teach us. We advance work in these areas. Our goal is to build momentum and capacity for our members, the 200 plus members. Together, we have to derive a collective strategy so that we can contribute together about this region's health and progress. And we must be about that aspect of nature and people. Again, not at war with each other, but beautifully, mutually benefiting. And in order to do that, we have to align across sectors. I was just gonna, for the fun of it, ask people kind of their backgrounds, whether in business, in farming, in conservation actions on the ground, in hunting. Do we have any hunters here? Any fishermen? Any hikers? Anyone working in industry? Oh, nature people. You raised your hand more than once? That is very, very odd. I could keep naming, but the bottom line is we all have one thing minimally in common, and that is our love for the land. We all have it. We happen to also have the love of clean water and clean air, a healthy, prosperous community. Who doesn't want that? No one. And that's what we come together with, that alignment, that important core aspect of our belief in our region, in our community, and what healthy really means. So one region does mean working across boundaries, whether they be business to government, to nonprofit, to faith-based organizations, to developers, to whatever we think serves as a boundary. We must work across them. We must not just think it's our way or the highway. We must be adaptive and innovative because we're learning things new every single day. All kinds of technology, both in nature and in industry, etc. And we have to always remind ourselves that there is a science, in addition to an art, that's part of all of this. And we need to remember to apply that, but also as we learn that science changes with us. Do you notice all these great McHenry County pictures? I'm quite proud. You might have seen a few and will continue to, but man, I love your lands here. So to have one vision, it's to acknowledge these many players in your region and the incredible assets they bring to the table. In order to do that, by doing that, you're leveraging resources, you're leveraging passion, you're leveraging knowledge, you're leveraging excitement and commitment in all kinds of ways. Bringing that together helps build capacity for your common strategy, which we found out a little while ago, everybody has that critical, aligned mission that we're all here to work towards. So one voice. This is really important, and I think that's why you're here today, to remind ourselves of all that you've achieved, but also understand, in the face of all kinds of challenges, budgets coming and going and going and going, and sometimes coming back, just all kinds of challenges, social challenges, economic challenges, public health challenges, all those things. In the face of those things, we need to bring our voice together because we happen to know that the actions around nature and engaging in nature can actually help solve some of those challenges if we think hard and apply that adaptive, innovative mind to it. So we need to align across those diverse constituencies, and we need to then think about how best to advance that shared vision. And I think we've got a great group here today. And you clearly have built a vision over time, but building upon that passion and really understanding the assets that come together with it are critical. One of the things that we're focusing on in Chicago Wilderness, we're calling it Beyond the Choir. We got some choir members here, probably altos, sopranos, everything in between, of the conservation movement. What we need to understand is our world is changing. Our demographics are changing, our region is changing, and we need to reflect that as we build a long-term conservation constituency. So we look at our constituency and our needed constituency over the long haul for that 7th generation, 654, I don't know, those living now. We need to take a look at diversity. And diversity means several things. It means geographic, it means economic, it means generational, and it means cultural. And it depends on where you are and what the issue is, but that diversity is what we embrace, and by doing so, we bring so much more to the table than we could have ever imagined. One, McHenry County. A collective strategy which brings about mutual benefit. You know, everybody's got a little bit of, I need mine. How do I get mine? Everybody does, because you come to it with an individual mission, individual passions. But thinking about putting a little bit of yours out there and seeing what other people bring to the table and what you come about with may be different of what you came with, what your original thoughts were, but the end solution is so much richer than you could have ever imagined. So that mutual benefit is important. And then the last phrase, I actually broke into lines. Healthy. That means healthy in so many ways. But we know we have public health challenges. Think of respiratory and cardiac challenges. That alone, the outdoors and nature, proven over and over again to have a dramatic impact on that, in addition to mental health. Prosperous. Also, so many things that prosperous means, both with regards to nature and to people. We all want to prosper. Again, anybody here don't want to prosper for the region? Anyone? Because I'll take you out back and we'll have a chat. Come on, I dare you. Okay. We all agree on prosperous. And then community. That is an acknowledgement of all the people that come together to do this work together and how important it is that we work as one. Sometimes it gets a little murky. You're kind of on fire, you're angry, what have you, but we actually know that even in that complexity, there's a great value. There's a great value of that moment in time, that confusion, maybe that anger, because that work is so important to what comes after those challenging times. What comes is, again, a more productive, a more effective, a stronger, a more valuable set of outcomes that we never imagined before. We just have to open our eyes, and we have to be adaptive as we think about it. So I leave you with a great industrialist's quote, which I just think is phenomenal. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. I wish you the best today and over the next 50 years as you continue to pursue and expand your successes here in McHenry County. Thank you very much.